2020 regular meeting of the Caneo Recreation and Park District Board of Directors to order. This evening's flag salute includes a brief ceremony. We are honored to have present this evening an Annapolis graduate from the U.S. Naval Academy here to lead us in the flag salute to our flag, while being accompanied by two side boys, the Honorable Mr. Huffer and the Honorable Mr. Nichols. Recognize that?
That was excellent. That's really good.
And I didn't even have a pipe. Side boys in place. Announcing here, Thomas P., Lieutenant, CEC, Civil Engineer Corps, U.S. Navy, retired. Lieutenant Hare, arriving. Mr. Hare, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Everyone stand, hand over your heart. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lieutenant Hare, U.S. Navy, retired.
First time we said unison in a couple of months.
Roll call, please. Lean?
Director Lang.
Present.
Director Nichols.
Yes.
Director Holt. Here. Director Hopper.
Yes.
Director Custer.
Yes.
Okay, item number 3, special presentations. Charlotte Hollifield? Oh, there she is.
Here I am. Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Chairman Lang. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Hey,
Oh, sorry.
Got unmute.
I don't have myself on mute. Hello.
Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Oh.
We're working
Can
on
you
it.
hear me? Hello. I can hear you.
If she were to call in on a cell phone and we put the speaker, the cell phone speaker next to the mic and try to do that. Got your cell phone? Answer.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, we can hear you now. I'm holding my cell phone up to my mic.
Is this Mark?
This is Jim.
Hi, Jim. Okay, here we go. Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right, terrific. I am not sure where my PowerPoint presentation is going to be. Can someone advise on that?
And it's up.
Okay, perfect. Okay, terrific. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight, everyone. Chairman Lang and members of the board and staff. My name is Charlotte Hollifield. I am the new Public Affairs Field Coordinator for California Special Districts Association in the Coastal Network. Next slide. Terrific. I've been with CSDA just about 3 months. I cover the coastal network, as I mentioned. I live and am based in Ventura, and I cover Santa Barbara and San Luis, Monterey, Santa Cruz, and San Benito counties. I most recently worked at Camarosa Water District for about 4 years, doing legislative affairs and public outreach. As well, I've been an aide to elected officials at the state and federal levels, including State Senator Gary Hart, who represented this area for many years in the state legislature. And I'm Ventura County native and Central Coast roots, and I'm very happy to be part of the organization. And I know several of you were on the Ventura County Special Districts Association chapter Zoom recently, so it's nice to see some of you again. Next slide. I just wanted to remind you all about CSDA. I know you're an active district with our organization, but again, our purpose, we've been around about 50 years. We promote good governance and best practices. We protect local government funds, that's our main focus, as well as special district autonomy and the core services that our members provide. And we do that in a number of ways: legislative advocacy and professional development, as well as certain member benefits. Next slide, please. And just off the slide for a moment, we have 6 field coordinators in the state. I'm one of the 6, and our role really is to be the eyes and ears of CSDA, be your local liaison if you need information or resources about our organization or just have questions about special district governance in general. We're always a resource for you. We have a pretty strong voice in the Capitol because we are the only association representing special districts of all shapes and sizes. We have 1,200 members now out of about 2,000 statewide total special districts. And our staff includes 3 in-house lobbyists as well as professional development. They're all based in Sacramento. But we have really seasoned folks who are able to work with the legislature on, I think they analyze about 3,000 bills a year that come across their desks. And we are at the table with other local government entities, and we collaborate where possible. Next slide, please. So our current priorities and actions, your board sent a letter supporting HR 7073, the Garamendi bill. We are very appreciative. That's a big focus of ours right now. We haven't been in the federal advocacy arena before, and we figured it was very important this year, given the COVID-19 relief funding that was taking place there and the fact that special districts were largely excluded from that pot of funding. So this bill would correct that. We continue our state advocacy. Specifically, we're asking members for another letter to legislative leadership to ask that any federal funding that is coming through the state that gets passed on to local government includes special districts as well as cities and counties. So, we make it easy for you with suggested templates. So that's my request of you tonight, if your board would consider that at some point in the future. We did a financial survey that was very interesting last month on the pandemic impacts of on our districts. We had about 430 respond, and basically some of the key takeaways is that our districts combined revenue losses and increased expenditures due to COVID-19 have suffered about a $250 million impact combined. And most everybody's anticipating some kind of financial impact from this pandemic. We continue to offer a number of webinars about COVID-19 as well as other topics. We have a variety of them on our website. And as you probably know, we've had to cancel some of our events like our annual conference. We've postponed our general manager summit, and some of our workshops and such are going virtual. Next slide. And as far as professional development goes, we have ethics and harassment training for boards. I'm sure you know about these. We have our specialized conferences and workshops. Our board secretary one is really, really popular. And we have a rescheduled date for our annual conference, which is next year in Monterey from August 30th to September 2nd. So you can mark your calendars for that. Next slide. And we have a number of ways that we recognize good governance. I know your general manager is a certified special district manager through CSDA, so that's terrific. We have other leadership opportunities. Here's our 4 opportunities that we do offer for our districts, really promoting good governance and transparency. Next slide. And then you may know we're a pretty information forward organization. We share a lot via email with weekly e-news alerts. I send out a newsletter every 2 weeks. We also offer a lot on our website with publications, sample policies, career center, RFPs, RFQs. So if you haven't checked out our website in a while, it would probably be a good thing to do because we do have so many resources there. Next slide. And lastly, just again, on our website, we have a number of communities. We have the open forum where maybe some of you have even posted questions and information share with your peers. We have a COVID-19 community that's available to members and non-members. We thought that was important to make that available, as well as just a knowledge base of a bunch of different types of resources for special districts. And if you're looking for a consultant for a certain service, we have a clearinghouse for that as well. So I think last slide, please. Oh no, one last slide is just other membership added values. We have a terrific partner with Streamline, with website hosting. We have a new partner with credit card merchant services. It's really reasonable, called All Paid. Some other opportunities for savings through CSDA membership. Next one. Terrific. So just a reminder, I'm here. I'm a resource for you. We have our website, a number of ways we communicate with you. If there's anything that you want more or less of, please let me know. And that's my presentation for this evening. And again, just so nice to be part of CSDA and get to meet you at least virtually. And I hope we'll be able to meet in person at some point. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Are there any questions about CSDA? Yes, Director Nichols.
Yes, thank you, Charlotte, for the presentation. I was curious of the 800 members that are missing from the rolls. In other words, you said there were 2,000 in the state, 1,200 members. Is there a particular group that they represent, or in other words, certain types of special districts that don't find CSDA to be beneficial, or is it a smattering across the board?
That's a really good question, Director. And in my limited time with CSDA, I'd have to say it's across the board, but it also tends to lean on the side of really small districts. You know, some special districts are 1 or 2 people, and they just maybe can't afford the dues, although our dues are on a sliding scale, and it is really, really affordable for small districts. So I guess that's the only trend that I can point out, is that a lot of smaller districts some don't even have 1 full-time employee. So that may be the commonality. But as far as the types of services, I think it's across the board.
Okay, and then one other additional question. You mentioned that the federal advocacy role was something new, and this was a new venture. Do you have some other ideas, either from yourself or other staff that you talked about, of other directions that the CSDA might consider to broaden what they can provide for services?
What a good question. And I'm just thinking about that for a moment. That's a larger question I'd probably have to get back to you on. Can I ask if you have certain suggestions in that regard?
Well, I guess just the aspect of it being federal. We, obviously, because we pretty much look to our own state borders for much of what happens here for special districts. Sure. And I'm not that familiar with the role of special districts throughout the country. If it's really more of a few states like California that rely on special districts, or if it is definitely a federal issue. And so I just kind of, more curiosity than anything else, is if there's a broader audience out there that needs to be served.
Yes, and the answer is yes. And in our advocacy, we have learned a lot. And one of them is that there are 30,000 special districts across the U.S. There are 7 or 8, Chairman Lang, don't ask me which states, because I can't remember right now. There are 7 or 8 who have statewide associations like CSDA, And we have reached out to those associations to partner with us on this federal effort. But it's really interesting that you asked that question because I was meeting with an elected official staff member who asked me the same thing, and she'd worked on the Hill and hadn't actually dealt with special districts before at all, but they are across the country and there are opportunities to collaborate on federal advocacy like we're doing now.
Well, thank you for the presentation, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you for all your time tonight.
Any other questions? I have a quick one about the size of the different regions. Is that what?
Yes. Networks, same thing. Mm-hmm.
And did you say there were 7?
There are 6 total, and mine is actually one of the smaller ones. We have, yeah, it sounds like a large area, but there are 5 other field coordinators that have as many or more counties than I do.
Okay, so originally the specific geographic area was based on the number of special districts associations, or what was the guidelines for establishing a network area?
Yeah, that, oh gosh, and I may have to get back to you on that too. The only history I can share with you, Director, is that when we first started this program 5 years ago, we had 1 field coordinator in Northern California and 1 in Southern California. So we basically divided the state in half and realized that was way too unruly. So then the plan came to hire more folks, and we ended up with 6 total. But I'm not sure if it's just a matter of like common sense that coastal counties might go together and Southern California counties may go together. But can I do a little research on that history for you and get back to you? Okay, great.
Thinking of when you, because you're our representative, and I was wondering how many you represent, et cetera. But sure, get back to any of us and any questions that we might have.
Great.
Well, thank you again.
Right.
And the best of luck in your new position.
Thank you very much. Have a great meeting and evening. Bye-bye. Bye.
Okay, good presentation. We're moving on to item 4. Items from the public. There are no public present. Any online? No. Okay, we're moving on to item 5, approval of the agenda. I'd entertain a motion. Thank you, Director Holt.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Very good. Director Cussworth is the second.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Director Huffer.
Yes, if I could, I'd like to suggest that item 9A, that we handle each of the 3 recommendations, 3 areas in 9A, handle them separately with a staff presentation, board questions and answers, and action on each of the items individually.
I think that makes sense.
I don't know whether that matters as far as approval of the agenda, since they're listed independently.
Okay, well, we know the intent of what you'd like to do, and they are on the agenda as individuals, as Director Holt mentioned. So let's just go with the agenda as presented, and then when we get to 9A, we'll go ahead and follow your suggestion.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Second? Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, that motion passes. Okay, item number 6, consent calendar. 6A, approval of the minutes of June 4th, 2020 regular board meeting. And 6B, approval of warrants as presented. Accounts payable registered total $421,491.56, and payroll $347,500 even. Anybody would like to make a motion? Thank you, Director Huffer.
I'd like to move approval of consent calendar items A and B.
Thank you, sir. May I have a second?
I'll say.
Thank you, Director Holt. We have a motion and a second to approve our consent calendar as presented. No further comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, that motion passes. We're going on to deferred matters, item 7. I'd like to open a public hearing on our preliminary budget fiscal year 2020-2021. And Melissa.
Yeah, Director Chair Lang, we were going to, we could have had all of our budget items listed under there now that we do have the budget here, but we have it listed later down in the agenda, and we're comfortable waiting for public comment on the budget now or under the item B. But
Okay, being if there's no public,
Yeah.
I'm going to close the public hearing on our preliminary budget. Now let's move on to item number 8, items for discussion. We have one item listed, CRPD update regarding COVID-19 local emergency. Mr. Friedel.
Thank you, Chair Lang and members of the board. I am not going to cover much more information than I have provided by email as of last Friday when the most recent order came out with the, I guess, addendum that a new state order on masks came out today, and then just about a half hour before our meeting started, a new county press release was issued that deals with a few more matters that I'll cover. But we have, there's this, like, you can't see that on TV, there's no way. So we are on our website, we have a COVID link on the homepage, and when you hit that link, you can easily see what is open with some modifications, and what remains closed. The good news is that the only things remaining closed to the public are the community centers themselves and the playgrounds, and those are both due to state laws. The Paradise Falls itself, Casca's Paradise Falls itself remains closed right now. It's only about 10 acres of the 3,000 acres of the Western Plateau canyons and Wildwood area. So it's a very small piece, but very popular piece. So that specific area is closed. And then we are not going to be able to open the 2 high school pools this summer because they're on the school properties and they have lots of other considerations. I can only imagine how difficult it is for the schools to try to reopen. But since we last met, we have reopened our pool, the community pool at CLU. So that's exciting news. And then what I would say is that we are getting a lot of contacts from folks involved with organized youth sports. I don't know if the board is getting similar contacts, but there's a letter writing campaign that's largely directed at the state officials and county officials, but we're getting copied on it. And so we're providing a response that kind of clearly articulates where the legal boundaries are with respect to the organized sports. Organized sports continue to be limited under the state law. We are allowed to have day camps and fitness activities occur, and so we've informed our youth sports organizations that if they want to resume activities and rent a field or facility, they can, provided they follow the guidance for day camps or fitness facilities. So we've let them know that. So I think that might be a glimmer of hope for some of those parents that really want their kids to get out there, and hopefully some of the sports organizations will take us up on that. At the end of the day, there's still this 6-foot separation. So most sports have, if you really, really play the sport, it's really hard not to get within 6 feet of people. So I think that's still a ways off, but at least, soccer, you can kick around a ball and stay 6 feet apart, but playing an actual game gets a little less likely. So that's where we are with youth sports. And then we talked earlier today about the new guidance on face masks. So in the state now, they're more of an order at a statewide level than a suggestion anymore in certain circumstances. So we provided that information. And then finally, the press release that just came out, I didn't bring it with me. They're reopening some of those personal services like, yes, nails, thank you, nails.
Well,
Yeah.
First he said no, but then I read today that it could be open tomorrow.
Yeah, so there's, and I didn't get into the weeds on any of the things that aren't really CRPD specific, but yeah, you can do filming and nails and tattoos and yeah, tattoos.
Oh, there you go.
The one new thing that was affects or relates to us is that weddings are allowed to resume. And so there's restrictions similar to the church services. So you know, 25% of indoor capacity up to 100, whichever is less. And then outside it can be kind of what the space holds up to 100. Yeah. But no parties, no receptions or parties after. So if someone wants to get hitched, we might have a space for you. That's it with the latest on COVID. And like you guys know, we're all living it. It seems to kind of change, you know, at least once a week now with what's going on. But the direction has been to reopen. We thankfully haven't even heard talk of like going back the other way. So it all seems to be pointed to reopening, but that's where we're at.
Very good. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. And this, I put this here so I wouldn't forget to mention it. This giant notebook is the, and I want to pass it around in, we do have our hand sanitizer somewhere if you want to use it, but I want to pass around. This is our work. So this is our work site specific plan for every single CRPD facility. So, you know, Hillcrest Center, we just have to worry about a few pages, but if you add up every center, every tennis court, every, you know, different park amenity and facility and staff, you end up with a giant notebook of all the different facilities, and there's a separate risk assessment and evaluation of each facility. So this is actually something I'm really, really proud of staff for putting together, because it really truly was done by everybody in every single division. So it's a cool amount of work, and I am going to grab some hand sanitizer and pass it down. Yes, sir.
Yeah, comment and question. First, the comment, you were talking about sports groups, and yes, I would get calls, not surprisingly. And one of the things I've been telling the groups is whether or not the park district is issuing permits, any of the parks that are currently open, you know, they're not being refurbished or something like that, it's a public park, but it's first come, first served.
Right. So we have never closed our sports fields during this entire time. So anybody who wanted to go out there, other than for refurbishment. So people can do fitness and exercise and do all those things anyway.
And the question I have is, with all the work that has gone into this COVID-19 book, is there any way that some of the procedures that have been set down and are being followed could be shared with any of the local nonprofit organizations who don't have a paid staff and lawyers and everybody to sit down and come up with all of these?
Yeah, absolutely. So like we have the day camp and the fitness facility type guidance, which we can share. It's just a combination of taking, there's the links online to the sort of the state outline. There's different tweaks that Ventura County might made, and they're really pretty minor. So you take those two things and then you use that as the template to create your own. And so we've done that, and we can share that with groups that want it. But I have noticed that, and that's for like the kind of turning a soccer team into a camp. You know, the youth sports organization activities themselves, playing the actual sport, that will be their responsibility to create and come up with. And most of the national organizations have done that. I've seen the Little League ones. I don't think I've seen the soccer one, but.
AYSO has some guidelines, but they're very generic because they are a national organization.
Right.
So even though most of their groups are in California, they have groups all around the country.
Right.
They have to be very, very generic.
Yeah, and I will tell you, although that book is very thick, the pages often say very similar things because the guidance, I mean, it boils down to literally stay home if you're sick, wash your hands frequently, cover your face when you cough or cough into your elbow, and physical separation, and yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. That's kind of the main, it's not much more complex than that.
Right, but at least it's a starting.
Yeah,
point.
yeah, absolutely.
So, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions for, yes, Director Nichols?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. General Manager, when you put together such a voluminous product like that, is there someone who's reviewing that to say, yeah, that's perfect, just what we're looking at, or is this just like a self-policing effort?
Well, so in terms of somebody that can come review it, it could be the County of Ventura, and or if they've arranged with their local city to have like a code inspector, building official come and ask to see your book. We have not had anyone ask to see it. Oh yeah, we have our own safety committee review it before it's put together. But yeah, and I will confess I have not read every single page of that, but I was involved with Hillcrest Center and that kind of thing. But I will tell you, I didn't actually read what we're doing with the anthill or something like that.
And then also as a follow-up to Director Huffer's comment about sports organizations freely using parks for whatever they see as an appropriate activity, is there anybody canvassing the parks to police things, to say, hey, you're not supposed to be doing that? I don't mean necessarily a park district staff person, but I mean, are there COVID police out there that are trying to make sure that people are doing things right?
So CRPD is not actively, chasing down people that appear to be gathering with more people than they should or something like that. The way the enforcement has sort of worked is a complaint-driven basis to the County of Ventura health officer. And so, for example, there's been a whole lot of complaints about Wildwood and Paradise Falls, and the health officer's been out there like 3 times to Wildwood and Paradise Falls. So they can show up, and other than Paradise Falls, I don't know of them coming on any actual CRPD facility. I've not heard of them coming to any park or so.
Director Holt?
I was just curious about Paradise Falls, because all the information determined going to happen by Costco. Do you have any input into what's going on? Because we are a partner.
Yeah, so virtually every decision that Costco's made, it's been a collaboration between the city and the park district. So either I'm on a call, Matt, Tom, or yeah. So we've been part of every decision. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions for the general manager? If not, thank you very much, and thanks staff and everybody who had an input for that COVID-19 notebook. Pardon?
Tom did it?
The whole staff, I said.
Oh, Jody didn't have it.
I didn't see any spreadsheets in there.
Okay, good people. We're moving on to item number 9, new items. 9A, Parks and Planning Budget Adjustments, fiscal year 2020-2021. Capital Improvement Plan, contract with Encompass Consultant Group, and contract with Andrew Goodwin Designs. And as noted by Director Huffer, we'd like to take each item separately for discussion and input by the staff. And then we can do our voting afterwards, but the discussions and everything.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. I'll talk about the what's relevant to recommendation number 1 first,
Thank you, sir.
and then we'll open up for the board to discuss.
Thank you, Herr Lieutenant, U.S. Navy.
Retired.
Retired.
Thanks, Chair Lang, members of the board. So first of all, we'll talk about the the Edison Settlement funds. Well, let me even back up a little bit. Yeah, in general, when we typically go between year 1 and year 2 in the capital budget, nothing changes, at all, because it's something that we approved a year ago. We might make some tweaks, meaning we carry over, but for lack of words, it's almost like behind the scenes type thing that it requires no board action. But because of the Edison settlement, it's a big difference. And so that's why we're bringing this to you and actually changing or proposing to change the second year of the capital budget. So remember back in December 2019, we got a little over $4.2 million of a settlement with Edison from the Woolsey fire. Last board meeting, we allocated $36,000 of these funds for the 2021 Capital Improvements Fund grant program, which left us with a grand total of $4.193 million. Now, if we go back to January 30th, we had a board retreat when our food came at the last minute, thank God. But so at that meeting,
Our priorities straight.
yeah, I was hungry. At that meeting, if you remember, we had I think a very thorough discussion. We shared with you our thoughts, and you shared with us your thoughts regarding how we should possibly allocate these $4.2 million that we received from Edison. So with that, we took like the criteria and used the guidance we got from that board retreat. We looked at projects that had direct and indirect links to the Woolsey fire, would strengthen park and facility infrastructure through measures designed to protect, prevent, and reduce damages by future disasters, and it would have the greatest impact to the overall community. So we dove into the 10-year plan, looked what we had there, plus again, taking strong guidance from the board retreat, and we formulated an allocation of the remaining funds in attachment A. So if you turn to attachment A, I'll go over these as quickly or as slowly as possible, however you feel. One of the big ones, quickly, okay. One of the big ones is that the first one there is the creek non-native vegetation and deadwood clearance and drainage improvements. That's nearly $1.7 million. If you go to the page 2 of the attachment, it gives you a little bit more detail. There's 7 different parks there that have what we are calling engineering improvements and also vegetation debris removal. And then district-wide, there's about a dozen or so parks and areas where we're just having vegetation and debris removal. The engineered improvements can range from anything from just, just think of they're man-made. This is something we're gonna have to hire a consultant, produce construction drawings, coordinate with applicable regulatory agencies, and then put it out to bid. So we would come back before you with an award for a construction contract for that. Like just quickly for an example, like Pepper Tree Park, if you're familiar with that, the difference between field 6 and 7, which are on the far side, and there's a little drainage ditch in between. It's from my knowledge that was, this is going back to the probably George days. This is the early 80s. Field 6 and 7 were not developed. They were supposed to be just like remain a vacant lot. And AYSO approached us and said, "Hey, let's develop that." And then I think what happened with that, the little drainage there was to figure out the other side of the park, and so we added more. We didn't improve the drainage for that. So that little concrete swale gets over the floods pretty easily. And it's fairly ugly. It's just a little concrete swale with a few pieces of riprap stone in there. So we would like to go in there, maybe, we've had some preliminary discussions. You kind of widen the swale, make it more like a natural dry creek looking thing, slow down the water and improve the drainage. So, so it looks like a feature rather than a little sliver concrete swale. So that's an example of the engineering improvements we would look at. A lot of the vegetation debris removal are just simply that. There's a lot of creek areas out there that have some deadwood or invasives like palm trees that need to be removed. So in addition to helping the flow and helping the environment, it also reduces the fire risk in those creeks. So that's a very large project that we're excited to move forward with. I'll skip over the next one. So number 3, the Kineo Community Park Assessment. that goes along with the third recommendation. That's the money necessary to move that project forward. The fourth project, dog park, parking lot, shade structure, and restroom. If you remember, I think it was back in 2017, we were kind of taken aback. We had about $300 and something thousand budgeted. And remember, sometimes we budget, we thought we had a good idea, but we thought the sewer line was in Las Flores, but the sewer line actually was actually 1,500 lineal feet south. So that was a big cost of that project. So the board at that time, we rejected the bids, and so we reslotted it in year 10. But we think this is a good project that affects quite a few people, and it's been a long-standing issue that we've had with the parking lot. And there's a porta potty there now. That's something that we could improve upon. And then also the dog patrons, or the patrons who own dogs, we're looking for like a shade structure. So we thought we combine those two projects, and we anticipate about $1.1 million from that. The playgrounds. If you remember, we had a per capita grant that we were told we got it. We were successful. We were supposed to have the monies near the end of calendar year of 2019, and for whatever reason, the money didn't come. And then COVID happened, so it even got further delayed. So when we're talking to this, and then the projects in the per capita grant were three playgrounds next year: was Toronto, South Shore Hills, and Lang Ranch Neighborhood Park. And instead of, the state, I mean, even though they might, it's not worth the risk. It was an $850,000 grant. It wasn't worth going forward with the projects without the money in hand, because then you can't say, oh, I already did them, give me the money anyway. Or changing the scope is not something that they might like that, but it's not worth the risk. So we decided to swap some playgrounds. We moved the next year's playgrounds to the following year, and moved some playgrounds up from year 3 and year 4 to this next year. So that's the swap. But there's also a $250,000 difference between the ones we're moving up to the ones we're moving back. Let's see. And then some major repairs, annual tree replacement for this fiscal year, next fiscal year, and the following fiscal year. Due to the fires, we've seen a lot of trees that need to be maintained and replaced throughout the district. We had $120,000 budgeted each year. This year, we're going to need $210,000, and we're just predicting the next couple of years at $200,000. So it's throwing an extra $100,000 each year, $90,000 this year, and $100,000 next 2 years. Drought response for the next 2 fiscal years. That's just accelerating the improvements. Putting in drought-tolerant landscaping, improving the irrigation out there. And then one of the other ones is to incentivize the partners, very similar to what we did for our 50th anniversary, where we did a double matching program. So again, trying to give a great impact to the community, put another $100,000 out there to our partners. That would actually take effect into fiscal year 21-22. But I would advertise that now that their applications that are due in May of 2021, we'd have this double match program, so we could give out additional funds to the community. And then the last thing I have in there, that was the amount of money, $130,000 was the amount of money that we did not receive from our fire recovery efforts from insurance, FEMA, and Cal OES. So that's the balance that's left over for that. And so then the last thing I want to talk about, going back to number 2, the capital improvement reserves. So that's yet to be determined projects that are out there. That's a little over $500,000. And we did generally discuss, and we unfortunately have not had the guidance to move forward. I know there's on Tuesday a meeting with the Rancho Potrero Equestrian Ad Hoc Committee. That's something we discussed that money might be used for. So we're going to wait for further guidance on that. So, but at the moment, we're just saying that's for funding for yet to be determined projects. And then the only other thing is just on attachment B. I won't go into detail. That attachment B is really just a result of all the things I just talked about. That's how the year 2 would look like if we changed everything. Where orange is the changes, and red is the deletion or postponement of those 3 different play area renovations to future years. And at this moment, I'm available for questions regarding recommendation number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Hare, for your presentation. Are there specific questions for item Director Nichols?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hare, for the explanation. It's a little challenging with the staff report and the spreadsheets. As excellent as you are with creating spreadsheets, to read between the lines of the things that weren't written down that you explained. So thank you so much for doing that. I did have a couple of questions. Do you know off the top of your head how many parks or facilities that we have that are within what the county fire department would consider the high fire hazard area?
No, I do not. That's my first guess. It would be the whole town, but I think I don't know. Very true.
I can picture the map.
Right.
Okay.
I even think we might have had that map with that.
When we had the North Branch meeting, we did.
I didn't remember how many facilities they actually included. I would imagine there are a fair amount.
Yeah.
It happens to be.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
It might be possible.
And as a follow-up to that, I was wondering with all this, there was nothing that I saw that was like specific to some type of a project like we took place, well, you took the head on, with the North Ranch Park kind of fire mitigation project. I don't know what else to call it. Do we have any other parks that might be as susceptible as North Ranch where you would want to kind of go in and say, yeah, with a little bit of hindsight, what I'd rather do is rearrange it. Do we have anything else like that we?
No, not when we not off the top of my head, what we look when we do the drought response projects. We do by providing more natives and getting rid of the invasives. That is a fire hardening technique to do that. And when we look at that on an individual basis, we go to each park. Like at North Ranch, the big, for lack of a word, concession or compromise we did. Remember, we had that additional decomposed granite buffer. But with our consultants, whether they were the landscape architects or the I can't remember the name of that, but the fire geo something, right? Yeah. Although they said it's not required, but obviously anything more that you would do helps, but that's not something that's mandatory or needs to happen for the park. But again, that was a concession of the balancing of what we were proposing to do and what the community, the neighborhood wanted.
Okay. And then also as a follow-up, which you just mentioned regarding the drought response measures, with those efforts, and again, in the viewpoint of the North Ranch Park effort, where all the concern with the mulch and such with contributing towards the fire, has that changed at all as far as what type of mulch is placed in parks or how it's placed moving forward?
Yeah, the type, no, we had the best mulch available that's out there, the least flammable. I don't know if you've ever seen the videos of mulch. I thought it was kind of, have you ever seen the testing of mulch? That's fascinating how someone just, it's fun to watch. But we hey, we're boys. Boys like things to go on fire. But we had the best mulch available that was out there. One of the things that we changed our practices, instead of we're not doing any of our drought response project where we're adding mulch. We're not doing that like just before the fire season happens, because it's when you're laying the mulch, the depth of the mulch tends to, we want the depth of the mulch to be minimal as possible. So we're not doing anything in the fall as far as when we're putting in mulch.
Okay. And then one last question. You mentioned something about a sewer line related to the dog park. Could you explain that a little more? Because I didn't see any reference here to the sewer line.
Yeah, that was pre you and Nellie, but that was,
yes.
So when we the dog park project, when we just felt like we're back of the napkin estimating it, we said, oh yeah, Las Flores, Main Street. How much is the sewer line to run from the bathroom to the middle of the road? Done. Because that's extremely expensive to run sewer lines. And then so we budgeted it, and I think it was like in year 2 of the particular, so we just, hey, good, 350,000 looks doable. And then when we got down to it, the sewer line, when we actually started designing the project, the sewer line was found to be 1,500 lineal feet south of the park. And there was no sewer line. All the sewer lines north of Flores went north, and all the sewer lines south of Flores went south. So there was nothing at Flores. So that kind of busted our budget with that particular project.
The septic system wasn't an option. Huh?
We talked a lot of things with the city. The cities, it was interesting. If they say if there's a sewer line nearby, and whatever their definition to a sewer line is, that you have to use it. We actually tried at Oak Brook Service Yard. That was a fairly long run also, and we tried to convince Public Works that, hey, let's do something really cool and innovative, because it's really just staff too. It's not patrons using it. So no, we had to actually go from that one. That's at the northwest corner of Flores and Erms. And then of course the best part was too, I'm sorry, I'm getting sidelined here. Public Works told us it was at the southeast corner, which was the short corner. And then it turned out to be the northwest corner. And then we had to add, $20,000 just to go diagonally across the street because of traffic control and all sorts of other things. That's the toilet at Oak Brook Service Yard is about $110,000. So.
Stories I never knew.
Right, it's about 10% of the whole project was the bathroom.
Wow. Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarifications. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, yes. Director Cusworth.
I just have a couple of questions that I'm just curious about. And it's on attachment A with all of the non-native vegetation, the debris removal, and the engineering, which I had asked him about the engineering earlier, and I hadn't realized that the costs for the engineering were part of this page. So thank you for clarifying that for me. What I'm wondering is these look like 3 separate things. And is there any type of, does the engineering have to be done before the non-native vegetation, or can you go ahead and do non-native vegetation because the engineering is more to do with drainage? And is there any kind of a timeline for any of these projects? And you may have listed what the timeline is, but I didn't see it. Are we thinking they'll be done in a year, 6 months, 3 years?
So if you look on the attachment, the first page of attachment A,
okay.
we put fall of 2022 for the completion of that. But that is a good point. Like I said, it'll be probably 2 separate items. One, the vegetation debris removal will be one for contract or one scope of work, and the engineering improvements will be another scope of work. So when we start, we'll start getting into the details, just like you said. Sometimes I could see where you would have to do the engineering improvements and then the vegetation, one follows the other. Some of them could be mutually exclusive. And then obviously, in some of them, we can start doing the vegetation debris removal right away. So it'll feel like it depends.
Okay.
Depends on the site.
And then thank you for that, for telling me this. So I'm going to assume, since I'm new, that FY means fall year?
Fiscal year.
Fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's fiscal year. I didn't know what those numbers meant before. So thank you. Now I won't have to ask that question anymore. All righty. I learn something every day in this job. I have learned a lot. And someday I'll never ask you any more questions, Tom, because I'll know.
You can always ask questions. Any other, talking about questions, any other questions for Mr. Hare? Director Huffer.
Yeah, Tom, I don't want to, I was going to say, don't want to get into the weeds. That would be sort of, the 7 park sites that you listed for the vegetation debris removal, probably asked you this question years ago, one of the very wet winters that we had, but I don't know what you describe it as, the creek or whatever the water way that is runs through Orchard.
Yeah, that's a school district property.
Okay, so we can't do anything about that.
That's correct. I just, at that time, I remember whatever it was 2 or 3 years ago when you contacted me regarding that. I contacted the school district, and it's still pretty thick.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I just, overall, I appreciate all the details here. I really like the combination of projects that you have. I'm glad that we're going to be able to do something about the dog park, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with fire prevention or anything else. It is one of our heaviest use parks in the system, and for people to be able to have greater enjoyment out of that particular park, I think is a great use of our money. Adding another $100,000 to the CIP fund grant. The local organizations are always desperate for additional funds to do what they consider to be important. So giving that to them, I think, is wonderful. And the 3 parks that you're going to be able to improve or upgrade the play areas. I just said, everything you have here, I think are great choices. So thank you for everything you put into this.
Mr. Huffer, I think what we could call the dog park is an evacuation site for fires that when dogs need a place to go.
There you go.
Hey,
There you go.
always thinking.
Wow.
You burned your keep, Doug.
There you go.
Now we just got to write a grant.
Okay, anybody else? I have a couple of quick ones. On 7A and 7B, we still got turf conversions. Specifically, if you can recall, where are those turf conversions yet to be made?
Yeah, that's a good point. Jim and I were talking about that too, and that's probably, it's just left over. But we called them turf conversions at the beginning, and then like a few years ago, we added the words drought response and irrigation improvements because they weren't just turf conversions. And now it's getting to the point we're not doing any turf conversions anymore. We're just doing drought response and irrigation improvements. We haven't done any turf conversions in 3 or 4 years. I think that's just,
Yeah.
the name is just left over.
Okay, so when we see turf conversions, we'll know that it's not turf.
Yeah, well, I'll change it. I'll change it next time so that we'll get rid of the word turf conversion.
Yeah, so the relationship is that we're going back into the sites where we did the turf conversions and trying to be more, specific with where the irrigation goes, and then plant new native plants that get, root drip irrigation and all that stuff. So it's really about going back to where we already did the turf conversions and replanting those areas.
Okay, good job, thank you. Okay, that concludes discussion for number 1. We're now moving to number 2. Authorize our general manager to enter into a contract with Encompass Consulting Group in a total amount of $175,700 for surveying, environmental, and engineering services for district-wide drainage improvement. Mr. Hare.
Thanks, Chair Lang, members of the board. So this is directly goes with that item number 1, the engineering improvements for the drainage improvements throughout the district. We're recommending Encompass Consultant Group. We've worked with them in the past on a variety of projects, from Banning Neighborhood and Park Expansion, Oakbrook Neighborhood Park Expansion, Del Prado Playfield. Good group of people, very trustworthy, very thorough. We really do enjoy working with them. And then we actually had contracted with them when the beginning of this process, right after the fires, right after the fires, where they actually put together a package that assisted us with compiling a FEMA grant to try to pay for all of this. But unfortunately, it wasn't their fault. It was just, we were not successful with the grant, and just a little bit, saying that's not their fault, meaning FEMA came back with us. They gave us, oh yeah, don't worry, you guys are going to get grants for all this. This is going to be a piece of cake. And then when they started asking us, can we do the hydrology studies from the last 10 years? And you're going, I don't have that. Well, we can't approve your grant then. And because they wanted to see the effect of the improvements would have on prior years. And so we thought, okay, well, we don't have that. So that's why I was unsuccessul. But again, they're familiar with the project, their qualifications, and then they've got a fair amount of demonstrated competence. We consider the cost fair and reasonable, and so that's why we're recommending contracting with the Encompass Consultant Group.
That concludes your report on number 2?
Yeah, yes, oh, sorry, I'm
Yes.
available for questions.
Director Huffer.
Yeah, because this is a consulting contract, there's no need for us to do competitive bidding.
No, because it's proposals, the board could, we don't have to do requests for proposals if we're comfortable with a particular consultant. But it's at our discretion if we want to do a request for proposal.
Okay, and sounds like we do have a lot of experience with them.
Yes.
And just looking at the proposal and some of the maps that were included, they've obviously already gone out and done some very preliminary work,
Mhm.
even though they hadn't been hired at this point. So I think it's great.
Thank you, Director Hutz. Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. I had a particular question. I went through all the different proposed projects, and a lot of them I are familiar with the location. Some I was a little confused, but I did notice, for example, on the Caneo Creek North Park, and has a little horseshoe bend picture in there. Is there going to be any need for concern with existing vegetation or habitat, something like that, where Fish and Game needs to get involved? You need to get
Well,
permits? Is
yeah,
that part of
and-
the process?
Yeah, it's part of the process too. And then if you notice too, I don't know if there's natural. They, one of their sub-consultants is in Viacom, so they'll be doing some of the environmental
I
and
saw
secret
that,
research
yes.
for us
Okay.
regarding just those questions. So it's just, the Encompass is a civil engineering firm,
Mhm.
and so they're going to rely heavily on, and then I forgot to bring up too, they're local, and then in Viacom is also a local company that we've used before on several different projects. So we're glad that they teamed up together, and they'll be giving us advice on what to do and who to talk to regarding those situations.
Okay, all right. And is there a schedule that's set for this, or is it just a matter of you directing them for one, or will they give recommendations? How's this whole process?
Right. So
work?
what we'll do is, like I said, it's so our whole goal is, like I said, we talked the fall of 2022 would be complete everything, and then so we would direct the timeline, but I could see probably about 6 to 8 months worth of going back and forth with secret documents and regulatory agencies and engineering, and probably have something out to bid in the spring of 21, summer of 21, and then awarding a contract after that. And then so, but unfortunately, sometimes, as you know, that sometimes you can't do work in a particular area because of
Nesting or something.
of nesting or something like that. So that will fall out as we do our research.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You betcha. The other, yes, Director Cusworth.
So I just thought of this question when you were talking. So right now we're paying the engineering firm. When it goes out for contract, will we be doing competitive bidding at that time?
Yes. Yes.
And I could just state quickly, a lot of, he told me in an email that a lot of this is going to be done beautifully with nice boulders
Well, that's
and
our
making
goal.
it look naturally as they always do. And I was glad that that was taken into consideration, because my first thought is, are we gonna have big drainage pipes? Are we gonna have ditches? What's gonna go on? We can't have flooding, but I think there's gonna be a lot, taken into consideration to also not mar the appearance of
Yeah,
our
we're
park.
not
So
a
I
big fan
appreciate
of
that.
Concrete.
Well, when you're talking about drainage things, I was thinking like culverts, concrete things, but it sounds like this is going to be done, environmentally, and that they've hired a really experienced engineering firm. And so I feel really comfortable with this project.
That's per normal practice for CRPD. Okay, in talking about bids and proposals, so forth, I noticed that 12 proposals were submitted.
Well, that's for the next recommendation.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll talk about that in a second.
okay, good. All right, any additional comments or questions for number 2 recommendation? If not, we're moving on to item number 3, authorize general manager to enter into a contract with Andrew Goodwin Designs in a total amount of $137,584 for phases 1 and 2 of the environmental landscape architectural and architectural services for Caneo Community Park and service improvements.
Yeah, thanks, Shirley, members of the board. Remember back in March of this year, we made a presentation to you authorizing us to go out for to get proposals for this particular project. And that was after all the public outreach we did, community meetings, et cetera, talking with staff. So we had some fairly good comprehensive data to put out there for the proposers. So we put it out for proposals. That's when we got our 12 proposals. Some very good ones, some very competitive ones, a few not so good. But so they so we got together a staff from both the parks and the recreation side, got together, reviewed all the proposals. We actually, it was kind of interesting. We separately, and this happens sometimes where we mutually rank them. We don't talk first, and we ranked Andrew Goodwin Designs as our top guy, from compared to the other one when we scored them all. So we thought that was pretty interesting. So then we interviewed them, and we really liked when we interviewed them. It seemed like a really good company, a lot of good past projects, that have good history that they have. They understood the, for lack of a better word, the gravity of this particular project, that how this would affect the community and the importance of it. They've done similar projects in other communities like this, where they've just built new recreation centers, and so they understand this. So we got together with them. So we identified them as a top proposer, went back and forth a little bit. And as you can see from attachment D, the first 2 pages on attachment D are very conceptual. I'm not sure what pages those are. That's pages 70 and 71. And it's nothing new for talking what you haven't seen before. Again, this is very just some initial renderings from the new community center, and enhanced seating areas and picnic areas, more trails, enhancing the amphitheater, maybe an entry feature with a donor wall, making the boulders and enhancing the creek and bridge, making that more of a natural feature, just like Director Cusworth was saying, possibly like a nature themed play area. And then as you go up towards Gainsborough, if you look on page 71, to improve the connectivity from the park to other parts of the community, like in this, that's Tarantula Hill, that's on the other side of Gainsborough. So people can go throughout the park. So again, these are just some really basic things that we've discussed with them. Since that we've shared some words, a little bit more details on how we're thinking, and that's what we really liked about them. What we really look at, because we know this is a very, for like a high dollar, high importance, very visible project, and someone it's going to take a couple years to do this easy, and that you always want to be able to work with a consulting firm that get along with, that they share our vision, which I thought was really good. They seemed like they understood where we were coming from and where the community was coming from. So we got the proposal, did a little back and forth as far as negotiating the scope and the cost, and we tailored the contract like we did the Southwood Trails contract we did a few years back, which is we do it by phases. It might be in multiple phases at a time, but then it's kind of like, what's a natural break? So we thought the phase 1 and 2, what's a natural break? We'll do some programming and schematic designs. And at that time, we'll come back to the board with, hey, this is where we're at. Does this look good? How do you guys think? I mean, and it's not like you guys will not be part of the process as we go along, but this will be from like the more formal presentation to you. When after the schematic design, and everyone, if we're saying, hey, it looks good. And then that way it gives us an opportunity, since it is such a long and detailed process, that maybe phase 3, at first he's got design development for $166,000. maybe I'm just saying it, but it's not going to happen. We added a third story to the building because that's all what we wanted. And he goes, sure, I can do that. It's going to be another $50,000. So then we change subsequent phases. And so that way we're not going into this obligating ourselves to every single phase at this point. So we'll just at the time do an amendment to the contract and for whatever particular new scope there is. So as we go along down the road, we can stop the project, postpone it, cancel it, or keep on moving forward with any sort of modifications that are out there. But all in all, it's what we envision the project being right now, to put a project out to bid. And then there's also including in this is construction support during construction and where they're as-builts. That's when they do some documentation for us. So if everything were to go smoothly, not counting construction, because construction could be a boatload of money, but would be about $750,000 with Andrew Goodwin Designs. But so it's been, so we really look forward to working with these folks and working with the community and working with the board and providing a really good project. With that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hare. Good presentation. Director Huffer.
Yeah, Tom, I appreciate the way you put this together in phases. I'm just curious, what do you estimate is the approximate timing for the first two phases, 1 and 2?
I think we were looking at I apologize, I know it's in the contract, but I think we were looking in the fall to come back. I apologize, I thought I had that with me. Yeah, I think it would be about another 6 months from now. Because in this, and those, about 6 months, I'd say, maybe December, January timeframe, winter.
Okay, because my big concern is, and I know it's a real balancing act. We want to do as much planning ahead of time as possible so that if and when the funds are available, you can get right to work.
Oh, yeah.
On the other hand, you don't want to spend $750,000 and get all this planning done and then realize there's no way we're going to pay for this project. So we've just thrown away $750,000. So the way you've structured this with phases, and I don't know if you have any other sort of midpoint stops where you'd be getting feedback from the board before you go through phases 3 to 7.
Yeah, it would probably be, because I remember that the total time frame they're looking at with like nonstop was about 18 months. So if you look at, I would say about 6 months for phases 1 and 2, and then design, development, construction documents, because then that comes with the estimating too, which is very important, because then they can give a good, accurate, like, oh, hey board, it's going to be $10.2 million. That's what our estimate is. And then that would probably be closer to 9 months to a year. Because then it's at that point, if we get to go ahead to do construction, that's when we're going back and forth with the city and we try to get our permits ahead of time. So in that way, the project's ready to go rather than, it's something that the city hasn't reviewed yet. We did, like when we do larger projects, when we did Sopway, and also when we did Del Prado, and when we did the teen center expansion, we have a lot of preliminary meetings with the city where with the consultant, and we just sit around and feel like we're BS with them about, well, what do you guys think about this? So if they see any red flags, like that's not going to work, okay, tell us what do you think is going to work. So that way our consultant doesn't design something and then you hand it over to the counter to them, and then 3 weeks later comes back with a whole bunch of red marks on it. So we try to streamline that process ahead of time.
Okay. Assuming a year and a half, 2 years to get through all 7 phases, you've got the plans ready to go sitting on a shelf. How long can they sit on a shelf and, wait for the funding of the actual project to come along before they totally go stale and yells at
they probably never totally go stale. Like even, okay, a good example, just using an analogy of like the dog park, where we're just talking about the parking lot. We have a set of plans for that. So we're probably going to spend a little bit of money just reviewing them, get a consultant on board, review them. Are we still up to code, work with the city. And so it's never you don't get this like stamp of approval, you're good. But until you put it out to bid, until you award it. And even sometimes if it's something changes during construction, which I've seen happen, where especially with fire, again, more side stories, but like when we were opening up the Los Robles Golf Course, the grill and the banquet center there. So it's like 3 weeks before the opening, and everything's planned about the ribbon cutting and all that. Fire came in and said, "Oh, I don't like this." Sorry.
I resemble that remark.
Those bums and fire.
And then you went like, what the hell? You approved it. Yeah, we changed our mind. And you're going, you got to be kidding me. So, but we had, all sorts of big shots coming, the whole deal. So we actually opened up with fire watch, on, so because the fire sprinklers weren't up to code. And then we actually shut down the very next day for about a month until we could renovate the fire sprinkler system. So there's never a like, oh yeah, you're good to go for a certain amount of time. Now, the only thing with that said, if we're guessing this is going to be a mitigated negative declaration, an M&D, as far as the CEQA goes with this project, like as we did with Sopwith and most of our other projects, meaning there probably is some issues, but that can be mitigated with construction. But usually with CEQA documents, once the board approves and adopts that particular CEQA document, I believe that document's good for 3 years before you have to, so that just can't sit on the shelf for 10, 20, 30 years. So you actually have to do a whole new document with that.
Which is what we did with Sopwith to a certain extent.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Clerk. Any other questions, Mr. Yes, Director Cuthbert.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Huffer. Those were a lot of things I was wondering about. But my basic question is, since we're not going to be going ahead with the benefit assessment, most likely because of all of the situations that are going on at this time, do we have any idea where the boatloads of money are going to be coming from? Because I thought that a big portion of that was going to be from the benefit assessment.
Melissa, talk to me about a blank check.
Yeah.
I think I'll take this. I would not characterize the benefit assessment as totally dead. So I think we have to see what actually happens. I know scenarios paint a very bleak financial future. Given COVID, others are a little more rosy. Obviously, if we're on the bleak end, we're probably not going to be able to do a revenue measure, but it's hard to know. Maybe if the 25 million we spend, 30 million, 35 million we spend on police, they decide that they want to give us 10 million a year because, kidding. I don't see that happening I don't see that happening in the Ventura County or Thousand Oaks, but I just don't want to, I actually often was conservative and really worried about getting too far out ahead of good ideas when you didn't know where the money was coming from. But it always feels like there's some way the money can be found. There's a good grant opportunity that didn't exist. There's just, for a really good idea, the money seems to materialize. And like for the YMCA in Westlake, they talked about it and dreamed about it and visualized it and wanted it to happen. All of a sudden, David Murdoch wrote a $25 million check. Yeah. So,
and with that said too, so like one of the, especially a very detailed project like this is much more attractive to grants, because like with Sopwith, we were 95% done. We were putting out the bid, and the kind of questions you get asked for those particular grants, like, well, what does it look like? What's exactly going to happen? What's your environmental impact? They're asking all these questions, and if you just had, oh, I got an idea, that sounds cool, and then you submit your idea, and they go, where's the meat to it? I need to, because they need to score it, it needs to have some substance to it. So, like Jim was saying, one of the, you do worry about getting too far out ahead of yourself, but I found I think it's a large advantage to get as much paperwork as you can do ahead of time, for two reasons. One, for the grants, and then two, what we've experienced in the past with, like, again, going back to Sopwith, Del Prado, even Canal Creek Southwest, which were fairly far out ahead of where we need to be, that it's, to me, it's more irritating than you get the money and then you tell the public, all right, let's go. And rather, let's go, let's plan for 3 years and the money is sitting on the shelf for 3 years. I'd rather have plans sitting on the shelf, and as soon as we get the money, because when you tell the public, whether it's or grant folks, that I got a project and I can break ground in 6 months, 8 months, something like that. Like, I'm ready. You give me the money, I'll finish it up, I'll put it out to bid, and we're good to go. They love shovel-ready projects, the community and funders.
There's even still talk of infrastructure legislation, at the federal level, and I don't know if a community center will rise to that kind of infrastructure need, but there's our big, park organizations, NRPA and CPRS and whatnot. I mean, there's a whole movement on green infrastructure, and the things that are, parks and park amenities are as important as freeways and highways and bridges and that kind of thing. So you never know, an infrastructure bill may have money for this kind of thing too. So,
and the consultant realized that he'll help us write grants too, whether he helps us, if we approve tonight, he could help us next month, next year, whatever. He'll help us with this. And because that's a feather in their cap too. When grants are received and projects get built, they're very invested because their name is actually on that particular project that happened. And then even like Jim was talking about infrastructure grants, you got to remember too, Conejo community, I think, is like we're ripe for these type of grants, because it is a, whatever it is, 55-year-old facility that needs some help with, everything's been grandfathered in because it's just so old. So it does need some help to get up to speed with current codes and regulations.
Well, believe me, I'm not against this, and I'm not against paying for it. I am your cheerleader. I will stand out there and jump around to have that building redone. I feel like whenever I go in that building that I'm back in junior high school gym class trying to talk to somebody through that sliding glass window. So I see that it needs to be updated, and I'm glad for us to be going forward because it is an old building. My question was, I so much want this to go forward, and when I went to your community workshop and I saw how beautiful this could be, and I think I probably already mentioned this to the board, but I was sitting next to Mr. Nichols and said, we need a 2-story building. They need a 2-story building because they have to have the view, and they need to have a rentable space, and we need to have weddings there, and it needs to be gorgeous. And when I first saw it, I thought, it's a 1-story building. And then he talked about building into the, bank, the hill. And I was like, yes, yes. So I am your cheerleader on this. I just wanted to make sure that since we were thinking positively about the benefit assessment and that would be paying for it, I didn't want to see this just go under, that we couldn't do it, because I think it's a great project for our community. This is our signature park. I think it should look really nice. So I'm just wanted to know, have you guys been thinking of some other ideas? And it sounds like you have been thinking of some other ideas, some grants, some different things, some ways that we might get some money in so that we don't just do this and go, oh, well, we don't have any money. So, I mean, I think that was my concern. And I certainly am not at all educated on getting money. But like you were saying with the YMCA, there are donors out there, there are grants. There might be ways we can get things from the government, and I'm hoping that that's going to be pursued. And that was my purpose for this question, so that this project wouldn't die, because I think it will really be a benefit to our community.
and actually, I'm going to use your enthusiasm as actually once the community kind of gets a hold of and understands like a really good idea like this, then the mission of getting the money, like we're almost just hanging on because people really want it that badly. And so I think there's a potential for this to be that kind of project where it's just so attractive and universally agreed that it would be a great thing, that getting the money will still be a challenge, but it'll be something we overcome. So yeah, the enthusiasm is critical. So awesome.
Thank you, Director Christopher. Any other? I know these, Tom, these are conceptual drawings totally, but Andrew Goodwin incorporated they interpreted your ideas, the staff's ideas, and then they came up with these conceptual drawings. A couple of things I really like is the northwest little quadrant there little triangle where he's added trees and hiking trails and connectivity to Tarantula Hill. I think that's a great use of space. It's been kind of misused over the years. And then something that caught my eye was the terraced rain gardens. Is that just when it rains, it kind of swelling the water? Now, is that water going to be recirculated or any specific?
No, it'd just be because the rain would, it's more effective at the capture on site.
Say again.
So when the rain, by using it, instead of just flowing into a drain, it flows to another part of the garden.
Okay.
So it probably is capturing the water from the roof of the building.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So like, yeah, the roof will drain onto the terrace rain garden and that absorbs.
Gotcha. I was thinking it was coming down the hill, but off the roof makes more sense. And then there's a drain associated with it. Okay. No flooding issues there. Again, good job.
And one more thing I forgot to mention, I mean, it's a detail, but it's very near and dear to my heart, which we put out, and I'm sure to Nellie's too, that we are going to have a significant nod to the old building.
To the what?
The old building, in the new building. What meaning, whether it's reusing some of the wood, some of the hardware, little picture history of the building, because it's once it disappears, my kids and grandkids and all that, the first building never existed, but this building is very near and dear to the community's heart. So I want to keep that, the Casey Kasem dance parties he had there. And so we told that to the and yeah. So we'll definitely, whether it's, we're thinking about all sorts of little different ways. We're getting so detailed, but we're all pretty jazzed about some sort of nod to the past that you can always know that the other building was there.
On that topic, Mr. Hare, make sure you get some of the flooring, because I did some square dancing in that building years ago.
Okay, moving right along here.
That's history for me. Okay. Again, any other comments or questions on the three items separately? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Mr. Huffer. I had an H.
I don't think you can do it. So.
No, I had an H in there.
Yeah, I think that's close. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move approval of staff recommendations 1, 2, 3. 1, to allocate funds from the SCE settlement funds to various accounts as detailed. 2, to authorize general manager to enter into a contract with Encompass Consulting Group, total $175,700. And 3, authorize general manager to enter into a contract with Andrew Goodwin Designs, total amount of $137,584 for phases 1 and 2 of the Native Community Park project.
Thank you, Mr. Huffer. May I have a second, please? Thank you, Director Cutsworth. We have a motion and a second. Are there any additional comments or questions? If not, all in favor of 9A, 1, 2, and 3, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Yay.
And thank you, staff. Good work, good work. We're moving on to item B, proposed adjustments for fiscal year 2020-21, preliminary operating budgets for the second year of the two-year budget cycle.
And might I kick it off for Melissa? I just want to, before she starts, point out that normally this would, be Cheryl sitting there, and having Melissa step into those really big shoes has been great. And I want you to know how thoughtful Cheryl was when she actually picked when she wanted to retire and all that stuff. She said very deliberately, I want to give it to you when it's like really easy. It's the second year of a 2-year budget. This is like the easiest time for you to come in and kind of not be too stressed out. It's a great way to get started.
But then COVID.
And so this is the most by far complex second year of a 2-year budget we've ever had to deal with ever. So with that, Melissa's been great trying to make sense of all this. So thankfully we have Melissa here, and she's worked very closely with Cheryl over the years. So Melissa.
Thanks. Yeah, and I am grateful that Cheryl was very considerate in a lot of the transition stuff. This one just didn't work out quite as she planned. So all the details about how we're trying to address the COVID issues for our budget are in your packet, but I wanted to give the presentation to highlight on the big changes and why we came up with the numbers that we did, because there's so much unknown. We wanted to give you an idea of how we came up with the numbers. So basically the expenditure changes come down to recreation and unemployment. We have our revenue assumptions, and then we're going to have a budget gap, which could be filled by unassigned fund balance or an operating reserve. And I wanted to kind of chat with you all about how you feel about those options. And feel free to interrupt me if you have questions. I'm happy to be stopped. So for the expenditure changes, when we knew that COVID was going to have impacts on our operations, we actually cut $1.2 million from our expenses. It's about 5% of the budget. But because of that new red pie slice in there, because of the unemployment insurance that we need to add, the total decrease in the budget is about $700,000, about a 3% decrease. But I did want to give credit, especially to Rochelle and her shop, because we cut 1.2 million going into this, which is a huge deal. So the big slice is the unemployment, and so I wanted to explain how unemployment situation is affecting CRPD. Because CRPD is self-insured, what would normally happen is if a former employee wanted to file for unemployment, they'd go to EDD, they get their claim, and then we would get a bill every quarter to pay for our portion of that person's claim. Normally it's $10,000 to $15,000 a year, maybe 1 to 2 active claims. Because of COVID, we now have over 100, which is just, it's a huge amount. And so it's kind of influenced by the CARES provisions because it incentivized a lot of people to take advantage of EDD. So the next slide is the scary slide because there's a lot on it. So I'll walk through it. The CARES Act came up with three new things for unemployment that do affect us. So the first thing is it expanded the eligibility for you to file for unemployment. So people who normally wouldn't have done it, like independent contractors, or who were self-employed, they can now make claims, and we've had a few of those. The other thing is they extended how long you could get these benefits. So instead of having 26 weeks of benefits from unemployment, you can now get 39 weeks of unemployment. And then the big one that you probably heard in the news is if you get any unemployment, you can get an additional $600 of unemployment every single week. So there are some people who maybe wouldn't have bothered to file because it wasn't worth it. Now there's a bigger incentive. And so our current numbers are we have about 120 already filed. We're getting more claims every day.
With CRPD?
Mm-hmm.
Melissa?
Yes.
Can I just interrupt? I see some board members looking through their packets. This presentation is in the folder that was
Oh,
placed
sure.
on the dais tonight.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is that. So you can follow along a little more closely because some of this is hard. to
Thank
Yes,
you.
especially busy slides like this one.
Yeah, sure. So just check out the folder.
Sorry, I should have pointed that out. But yes, we have 120 active claims from CRPD. 97 of them were employed when we shut down certain things for COVID, but some of them are former employees that maybe they were from last summer or something like that, and they've lost their current job, but we are included in part of the claim, so we have to pay a portion of that person's claim because we're in their last year of employment. So that's how it works, and so we're kind of guessing how much that impact's going to be. So we took the maximum number of people that we think can qualify. Again, it's a little weird because they've expanded. It's not just your employees, it can be your independent contractors. It can be a lot more people now. And then we took the average amount that each of those claims are costing. And then we ran it out to be the maximum amount. Go to the next slide, which shows that. So maximum amount of potential claims, average claim, and then the maximum length of time. So the full up total across both fiscal years is about $700,000. The impact on this fiscal year is going to be about $200,000, and our guess for next year is $500,000, which is very scary. And that does not include the additional 600 that's paid for by the feds. So that's not even including the additional 600. That's just our portion of it.
So that was one of my questions, we are not paid that.
No, no. The other portion that we're still unclear on is we should be eligible to be reimbursed for about half of what we are putting out. So if we do end up paying the whole 500 that we're guesstimating, we should be able to get 250 back. Those funds went from the feds to the state, and the state has not given clarity on how they're going to distribute that or reimburse us. And so we're hopeful, but we just don't know when or how or what they're going to do with that. So in the meantime, we're budgeting kind of the worst case scenario for if all those people file and they get their unemployment checks for the whole 39 weeks.
Excuse me, Melissa,
Sure.
I have a question on the reimbursement, which I know is just a hope at this point.
Yes.
With the state 50-some million, billion, however much in debt, and the federal government just issuing $4 trillion in stimulus, what is the chatter out there about the likelihood of anybody ever getting any reimbursement? I mean, where's the money going to come from if the reserves have all been emptied?
Right. So it's really unclear, which is why I'm suggesting that we budget for the full amount. They are obligated to say how they've received the funds that they've given their best guess based on the EDD calculations. And so they've received funding from the feds already. So we're going to see how they report that. And your guess is as good as mine about how they're going to deal with that when the state budget, if they have issues or how they move forward with that. And the chatter's kind of all over the place.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So just, I'm trying to pull together numbers from various places and just make sure I'm understanding it. When looking at the general fund expenditure, the page 99 of the package you gave us, under the management services, am I correct that the proposed adjustment for risk management, 498, 562, 564, that's the unemployment insurance?
Correct.
So you have a full amount there, and you, again, this is the worst case scenario. You have nothing under revenues for possible offsets.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I wish we had offset. So that is unemployment in a nutshell. I'm sure everyone wanted to learn all of that. And so we'll go into the recreation expenditure reductions. Most of these details are in your packet, but again, I wanted to go over why we picked the numbers that we did. You probably remember we did a survey, recreation staff did a survey asking people if they would feel comfortable returning. 50% said that they would definitely come back. 25% said possibly. So we thought maybe don't go to the maximum of 75, call it 65%. So maybe assume a 35% reduction. Again, these are estimates, and yeah, that's all I can say about it. They're estimates. So what we did with that information is we said, okay, we'll do a reduction in part-time staff and our contract staff by that same 35%. Some other locations, like for the pools that are not going to be open, we've done additional decreases or increases based on that, but generally it was 35%. And then recreation is taking on the responsibility where if they are able to open up more, get more revenue, they're going to adjust their expenditures as those come in. So it's a very real-time analysis about whether or not programs are viable. And so the way that they're operating, rec will decrease the expenses if the revenue goes down. It'll increase if the revenue goes up, but it means that the district won't be contributing any more to those programs than they normally would. So The work centers that we put the very detailed specific pages in the packet are the ones that had budget impacts on the programs. And so I wanted to go briefly through what the different graphs on those pages mean, but I'm not going to go through every single work center unless you had a question about a particular one. So we included a brief description of the work center and then some employee information. So I wanted to clarify the fiscal year 1920 employee information is the number of employees that we had at that work site before COVID started. The fiscal year 2021 is it's just a calculation based on the assumed reduction of 35%, but it does not mean that we're cutting active staff. The staff have already been having the reduced hours that Rochelle's been reporting to you all. And then as hours become available, we'll be bringing staff back. So it's the employee numbers are much more of a kind of guess to illustrate the impact of the budget changes. The program information slides are all the information that Rochelle's been providing to you guys. It just shows the year-over-year comparison, so you can see how spring did last year, or not spring, how summer did last year, how fall did last year compared to this year, and then obviously the impact of canceling spring. And then finally, the preliminary versus proposed budget. It's to highlight the main expenses of the work center and then to show you the impact of the cuts that we're proposing for part-time and contracts, down 35%. So that was my last slide on expenditures. So if there's any questions on any of the work centers, I'd be happy to take them. Not, I will go on to revenue. Okay, so for revenue assumptions, we not only tried to take into account the revenue sources that would be affected by the restrictions that COVID limitations would put on us, but also we're not sure how comfortable the public would be coming back. So we chose that same 35% to assume the reduction in certain categories of revenue. So when we look at the impacts on our overall pie of general revenue, it's again about this 3% decrease in the overall expenditures that are needed, and it leaves us with about a $650,000 budget gap for this year, which is a lot. And I do want to remind you that about $500,000 of that is for the unemployment. So we did make a lot of cuts, understanding that the revenue was coming down to equal it out. And so, there we go. So the two options to fill the budget gap are the unassigned fund balance and the operating reserve. I had recommended the unassigned fund balance, so I wanted to explain why, but also tell you about the operating reserve option. So for the unassigned fund balance, historically, when the state does have issues financially, they do scrutinize special districts on an unassigned fund balance. And so it's one of those pots of money that are available that might be considered when the state has financial trouble. There's $2.5 million available. Normally, this would be kind of available for capital projects. And so if for some reason we do get the reimbursement from unemployment for whatever, then that it could remain in fund balance to be available for capital projects going forward. The operating reserve is completely an appropriate use of these funds. It's what it's for, is for this exact situation. But we did say in the reserve policy that we wanted to have 3 to 6 months. And if we did use this fund, it would be at the very, very bottom of that 3-month minimum that we wanted to have. So I'm happy to hear discussion on that or opinions on that.
Well, I was so pleased to hear you talk about the unassigned fund balance, and I almost envisioned Cheryl saying the same thing, and for the same reason. It just makes sense, especially with the state out there looking for sources of funding. Director Hupper.
Yeah, you know, over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years at least, working with Cheryl on the various fund balances, you know, we've been trying to not necessarily isolate, but we've been trying to create fund balances that are somewhat insulated from general usage. And the unassigned fund balance, I know just in the last several years, at least my recollection is that unassigned balance has gone down fairly significantly as we move funds into other specified funds. As you pointed out, that balance traditionally and historically has been used for capital projects. And yes, we currently have an additional source of funds that can be used for those capital projects. But I personally feel more comfortable if we were to use, because the operating reserve is specifically for unexpected operating expenses and contingencies. That's exactly what we have right now. Yes, we want to have 6.5, 7 months, ideally maybe a couple more months, but the whole reason for that operating reserve is when we run into a situation like this. So my personal preference is that we would take the funds, the budget, fill the budget gap from the more, what I feel is the more appropriate source, which would be the operating reserve.
Thank you. Director Cusworth.
So I just need you to clarify for me. The unassigned fund balance is money that we have. We are not dependent on the state or the federal government to give us that money. That is our money right now. Okay. The other question I have, do we have any staff that is not wanting to come back to work because they're making more money from unemployment?
So there's not been any staff that have said that, but if we were to offer hours to a person, they are required to report that they were offered hours and explain why they didn't take it. So because I make more money on unemployment is not an accepted response by EBD.
Okay, I was just wondering if it would be maybe that they were nervous about, catching COVID or something like that, which would be an effective, most likely. But we haven't had anybody who has been refusing to come to work.
No, and if there was a situation where we offered hours and then somebody was concerned about COVID, there is also the emergency paid sick leave and emergency time off that's separate from unemployment that they can qualify for as well.
And how long are we obligated to pay unemployment? So I'm only asking this not because I'm not wanting to pay unemployment, but just because you were saying that 50% of our problem is unemployment. And so how long would it take before we don't have to pay unemployment anymore?
So each claim is for 39 weeks. So it depends on the date of the time that the person filed.
And how many times can they make that claim?
Once.
Oh,
There's
it's just
one
once.
start
So
date,
after
and
39 weeks, if they're offered the job, then they can't take unemployment anymore. They'd have to get funds from another source.
Yes.
Okay. And as far as the unassigned fund balance and the operating reserve, since I don't really know that much about it, I'm going to go with what other people think is the more, the better place to put it. Take it, I guess, not put it, take it from. But at least it sounds like we do have money. And because of the good
We have
financial,
two options and I'm open
the
to
good
either.
financial planning that we've had in CRPD, it sounds like there is, at least that is very positive. We do have the money. So
Exactly.
congratulations, CRPD.
That's exactly why we have these options right now. Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Just to weigh in on where the money comes from, appreciate Mr. Huffer's input on that. I know he has a lot of expertise in dollars and cents and knows how all these things work. And I'm impressed with the argument that you make. I'm also reminded that the district has been used as a fund source for the state in the past.
A couple times.
And I see that as a real possibility. So I would lean that direction and going to the unfunded balance, or the unassigned fund balance for that reason. Even though the money is available in the other one, it's just to make it less attractive to the state. And I just have a feeling that that's going to be a real possibility for us. So that would be my preference.
Any other questions of Melissa? Yes, Director Helfer.
Could I ask Director Holt, since you're the other member of the budget subcommittee, if you have any input or preferences to which fund this budget gap comes from?
Well, I think Melissa has explained the options and I agree with what she has said. I mean, sorry, Melissa, but welcome to the new world.
I got to learn CRPD very well, very quickly.
Did you have something?
No, I think the board members captured kind of the feeling we had, which is kind of like you can make the argument on either fund. They're both totally appropriate. So there's not a truly not a right or wrong answer. And you guys have heard our discussion. So it's kind of an easy discussion, but also a hard one. I mean, we have the money, whichever pot it comes out is totally fine. And so it's just a choice to make. So it's not so it's up to you guys.
Okay.
So does this require any board action, or is it just more a feel of the feedback you're getting from each of the individual board members?
So this, the overall agenda item is, you know, if you think about, we like to always make sure we give you the capital and the operating budget before an action item so that you can just kind of think about it, absorb it. We have a discussion. If there's any changes, then we bring it back for action. So tonight, we're not really looking for you to vote or approve the preliminary operating budget. But on that last slide, if you'd give us a sense of which of the pots to use, that'll help Melissa with planning.
Well, it sounds to me like the sense of the board is that the unassigned fund balance would be the appropriate place. So.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, just, again, like Director Nichols said, the states out there are going to be looking wherever they can to find money. We don't want it to be our money.
Yeah, like a big unknown is there going to be another bailout bill that helps specifically states and cities and that kind of thing, which is, you know, unknown. It's being talked about, but we don't know.
Okay, so staff.
I have one further
Yes,
question.
go ahead.
Did you prepare this beautiful presentation or was this Jody?
I did this.
This looks very nice.
I'm complimented that you thought it could be her.
Okay, good. So staff, do you have a feel for where we're going with this?
Yes.
Okay. So no further,
Well, I wasn't quite sure if we were going to just off of this, or, I mean, you know, we have the whole budget presentation. I did have a few additional questions about both revenues and expenditures, if I could. All right. On the revenue side, you know, I only saw a couple of them and that it represents a relatively insignificant amount of total revenues for the district, but what impact might budget cuts from the school district have on our revenues? You know, the one that I saw particularly was the youth outreach program. I know the school district is early in the process of trying to figure out where the heck they're going to cut their expenses, because they're, I mean, we're really fortunate that most of our revenues are not impacted compared to what the school district is going through. So is there any significant impact if the school district cuts virtually everything that we might have any dealings with them on?
So for right now, we're keeping the budget as is. I'm in communications with the school district staff on what youth outreach will look like next year. And at this point, we haven't heard anything back from them other than that they are hoping to get us some information by the end of this month because they know we are working on our budgets. So it really depends on what school looks like next year. Our campus is open. Are we on campus? Is there a need for us not on campus? You know, all those, we believe that there's a big need still to keep in touch with that population of youth. So we think there will be something, but we just don't know what it'll be yet.
Okay.
So, but we're leaving the budget in. We haven't heard that they're getting rid of or decreasing it or anything at this point, but we hope to have information by the end of the month.
Okay. And it just, in looking at the expenditures, it's sort of not surprising that most of the adjustments, negative adjustments are occurring in recreation. I really want to compliment, I don't know whether this was you, Melissa, or Rochelle, or the two of you, or a bunch of other people, but the details you provided for both revenues and expenses for each of the individual centers. Obviously, a lot of work time went into that, but I found that very helpful to have that level of detail, because that is where the biggest hit's going to happen for the district. I know there were, parks and planning, relatively small impacts. I didn't run the percentage, but only 300 and some thousand out of 9 million. So, but the detail it gave us on recreation was very helpful. So thank you for that.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions? Good job, Melissa, and your staff, and everybody else who had input. We're moving on to item 9C, MRCA preliminary budget. Staff?
I'm sure you'll be sick of my voice.
Never.
So MRCA is experiencing COVID just like we are, where they're trying to do their best guess on how it's going to impact their revenues and expenses. And they did similar assumptions where they're assuming less revenue for things like events and filming. And then they're assuming a decrease in expenses related to those activities as well. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that I can on the MRCA budget.
Any questions of Melissa? And as indicated in the staff report, the MRCA board has, beginning of the month, approved the preliminary budget.
Mr. Chair, I had a question.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
Mr. Nichols.
what is the Overlooks Permit Program?
So the Jerry Daniel Overlook, which is also the Hollywood Bowl Overlook in other people's words, is a popular stop for tour buses. And so for them to use the Overlook, they actually pay a fee for entering and exiting.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Good question. Any additional questions?
How is Jerry doing? Not good? How is his wife?
Charlene is fine.
She's okay? I worked with Jerry Daniel a long time ago, before Thousand Oaks, before I knew Thousand Oaks existed.
Okay, Mr. Nichols, were there any additional questions?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. This does require action. I'd entertain a motion at this time.
Nice.
Thank you, Director Elbert.
There's nobody else jumping out. I move to approve recommendation to approve the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority preliminary budget for fiscal year 2020-21.
Thank you. We have a second.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Nichols. Having a motion and a second. Any additional comments or questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, that motion will pass. Item 10, reports and announcements, specifically budget performance for April 2020. Yes, Director Huffer.
Well, I noted this last time, but I think it's somewhat important just to note that when you're looking at the total revenues, that figure does include the 4.2 SDE settlement. So to say that we're 107% over budget technically is correct, but it's a little bit misleading. So
Yeah, we figured it out. Okay, any other comments, questions on reports and announcements? If not, we're moving on to item 11, department reports. Mr. Harrer.
Yes, thanks, Chairman, members of the board. A few items in a couple weeks, next board meeting. Plan on bringing back to you updated lease agreements with the school district for Kenyatta Waverly and Lynn Oaks Park. Those are 1977, 82, and 83. They're about a page and a half. You know, just kind of says, hey, yeah, do you do this? We'll do that. So it's just kind of making it a little bit more formalized. We've already talked with their staff, and staffs have agreed upon what it should look like, and they're going to take it to their board on June 30th, and I'll probably bring it to you on July 2nd. And construction stuff, the TO, we're talking a little bit about the TO Center preschool restroom. That should be done by early next week. So if you want to come on by and take it for a spin, please do.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
At the TO Center, are they doing the restrooms for adults as well? You know, fixing them up, or is that in progress?
No, just nothing. We didn't do anything different to the restrooms.
Okay.
Yeah, no, just we added the little restroom in the preschool. Yeah. Just got off the phone today with FEMA regarding Woolsey Fire. So we've got I've got to do some final paperwork for them for the last little bit of $4,365.12. So I've got to prove to them that we were worth that amount. And so when it's all said and done, I'll let you know when we get that money, but it's approximately between insurance, Cal OES, and FEMA, we'll have recovered about $865,000 of the $995,000. So we're just about $130,000 short, but it was pretty good, a lot of fun. Okay, no, Aline gets it. No, it's not fun. And then just we just scheduled it because you guys just approved it. So we'll be having a kickoff meeting with the consultant for Kineo Community Park in a couple of weeks. So we'll get that project up and going. So it's kind of like a meet and greet with staff and with the consultant and on site, just kind of going over our needs and setting the timelines and what needs to be done. So that's happening in a couple of weeks, and again, I'll update you appropriately as we go along. With that, available for questions.
Any questions, Mr. Hare, on his report? Okay, thank you, Tom. Moving on to item 11B, Recreation Division. Rochelle.
Thank you, Chair Lang, members of the board. So you guys have your recreation highlights this week. So you can see a couple pictures of what COVID camp looks like in the highlights. And then on the second page, you can see what COVID tax season looks like. And I'll let Director Huffer talk to you more about that. As Jim briefly mentioned earlier, we are working with staff and our local sports groups and independent contractors on if they are able to and want to run fitness classes or summer camps, that we are open to getting them space in our buildings and or our fields. So hopefully some of those things will start kicking off no later than beginning of July. Some could happen sooner, but they do have a lot of paperwork that they need to get into the county in order to be approved and show proof that they've done their due diligence to us in order to open their camps and or fitness classes. But staff are working on that. And then as Melissa had mentioned on the last page, you can see that in March, we had about 2,500 hours were typical hours in a week. And you can see all the weeks during COVID, how the numbers just kept going down and down when we used less and less staff. And now you can see this week, the numbers rising up. And so we'll continue to do this report for you until the end of summer. And my hope is that as we are able to implement more programs and we make adjustments to what kinds of programs we can have and we get more kids in our programs, we'll need more staff to run those programs and you'll see those numbers go up. And with that, I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Sure.
Any questions? Yes. I got to learn, when I was looking at the Zoom thing, keeping my eye on the little squares, now I got to learn to
turn over. Well, this is much nicer, I think, than the Zoom. At least I'm not going like this. Anyway, how is your preschool or your summer camp going? I am extremely interested in this, and I'm hoping this is going to teach all children how to deal with school, and I'm hoping the state is going to say that it is possible to have children be safe at school, because of summer camp. So I'm really glad that you're doing it, only because I did not find virtual teaching school to be as effective as it could have been. I mean, as in-person teaching. I think we did the best we could. But you've got the kids spaced here. Is it doing well? What are the instructors thinking? Are the kids having fun? I mean, how is it going? Because I'm very interested in your program.
I mean, I would encourage you to go to Orchard, or Tuesdays and Thursdays go to TOC.
Wildwood.
Yeah, you can go out to Wildwood also. They're at Thousand Oaks on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or Conejo Creek North. They're out there every day also. But Borchard's a pretty busy site, so you kind of get to see everything there. There's several different camps, but you know, the 2 days that I went out and kind of watched things, the kids were having a great time. Nobody was complaining about their mask. Nobody was like throwing them on the ground, not wanting to wear them. We're really lucky with our staff. They were all in really good spirits, excited. The kids were, you know, of course, kids like to be pretty close to each other. So even though you have 10 in the group and you try to keep this, you know, they had lessons. We have dots on the floor. We have X's on the picnic benches. So how many kids can sit on this picnic bench? I mean, the staff have really thought everything through. They're kids. They're not always 6 feet apart from each other. But then, like, they did a craft out at Conejo Creek North, and the staff were like, oh, okay, we're all at this table. So, and they were sanitizing, you know, we had extra staff sanitizing the markers after everybody used them. And so it's doable. The kids are just ecstatic to be out
and being with kids.
So, and parents were really great too. We've had a couple really nice letters to supervisors saying thank you so much. And parents have stayed and kind of watched to see what's going on. The first day of camp I watched, and there was a dad there, and he's like, okay, this looks pretty good. I'm gonna leave now.
So how many kids do you have enrolled in camp this year, and how many would you have had last year?
So currently right now, the numbers that I have for you is I have every class that we possibly have available, how many spots are available for the whole summer, which is about 3,360 classes right now, which is a lot less classes than we would have had in the past, but I don't have that number for you. Slots, sorry, thank you. Yes, clarification. These are the slots that are available for people to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's a lot of classes
No, the total,
you guys are putting
the total
on.
number of classes I do have, there's 219 total numbers of classes. There are 3,360 slots between those 219 classes. We currently have enrolled 1,993. So we're at about 59%. No, my percentage is wrong.
33%.
Yeah, more like 33, I think.
Yeah, so we're doing fairly well for the number of slots we have, because that's all the weeks to the end of summer. So like our weeks right now, the next 2 to 3 weeks are pretty full.
Oh, they are, okay.
Yeah, skate camp's like sold out the next couple weeks. Wildwood camp is sold out the next couple weeks. Now, normally we would have 2 Wildwood camps. It's very difficult to get staff right now. So we have 1 Wildwood camp. So instead of 60 and 60 kids, we've got like 50 kids. So what we're able to offer, due to the amount of staff that we have, our staff are still trying to hire staff, and we are getting some staff. But that process takes, you know, a week or so to get people in and trained and all that good stuff. So
when you were doing camps before, how many children would you have in a camp?
In a camp, like 60 at Wildwood.
So, I mean, it would just be 60 altogether in a group, because now you would have, how many do you have at Wildwood?
So we have 50, so we have 5 groups of 10.
50, so you just have 5 groups of 10. And
Yeah,
that's
so-
seeming to work okay.
Yeah, well, they
Okay.
normally would be in groups of 10, but there's a lot more times when they're closer and they're all together at, you know,
I
at
see.
welcome time, and they're all together at lunchtime. So we were able to do staffing a little bit different, but now that one staff has to be with that 10 kids the whole day, or at least
day.
half the day if they're working half day, so that there's less
Oh, no, I understand.
people.
I mean, I am totally passionate about wondering
Yeah.
about this, because it's
Yeah.
going to be what I'm facing. And I've thought 1 to
Yeah.
12 I can handle pretty well, I think. But
Yeah, and our littler guys right now it's still 1 to 8 or 1 to 10 depending on the room size. So we're pretty much 1 to 10 everywhere.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm glad you're having so much success and that your staff is working. Kids
They're-
need this. It's a great thing to be providing.
I know Jim went out the other day and I went out and it was just so nice to see kids playing. And, one of the pictures it has, these kids were outside and we actually don't require them if they're able to be 6 feet apart from each other. When you're outside, you don't have to have your mask on. And they wore they were playing games, running around. They wore their masks the whole time.
I was at Descanso Gardens today and lots of kids, they all had their masks on. So I think they're getting used to it. And I thought the picture here of the one little boy with his arms out, I don't know if that was so he knew he was distanced or not.
I think he was trying, that was the first bathroom run. So staff were in the doorway, kids had their masks on because they were within 6 feet. And then there was another staff in the bathroom that every time a kid used the paper towels or washed the sinks, they were cleaning everything behind them. So there's additional staff around cleaning toys, cleaning soccer balls, cleaning different things that between groups of kids using them that they're having to clean things now.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think one advantage is kids are not wanting to be at screens all the time anymore. I think they're getting sick of that. So going outside and playing with other kids is probably, a nice thing. Yeah.
As the grandfather of 2 grandchildren who are at Wildwood Park, and the youngest is 6, and I was sitting out on the front porch waiting for them to come and visit Grandpa and Grandma, and first thing I asked was, how's summer camp? And I got 2 thumbs up. So, they said great, but the youngest one said great. So congratulations on putting together a great camp.
I know,
It's
Avery
phenomenal.
and Summer have
With
done
all
an
these
awesome job.
restrictions, and so forth, you're making it happen. Director Huffer.
Just a couple of things, Rochelle. I know I mentioned before the meeting, it was really neat to finally see the CLU pool open and the lap swimmers out there. Is there any way we're going to have any kind of lessons at all during the summer?
We are prepared for them. We are ready to go. Right now, what's holding us back is that we're not supposed to touch the kids. Okay. It's hard to do lessons. So I believe next week, I think Dee has some of the signups going on. We are able to teach from the deck. So if it's a mommy and me class, they can be in the water with their kids. They've been real creative. They've come up with ways to do open swim to an extent. Sectioning off, they've got plans to section off about 4 square areas in the pool, and you have to rent them. So you're allowed so many people in this area and you get to come in and play in the pool for an hour for this amount of money. So they're coming up with some really creative things, but yes, lessons are gonna happen because they are seen as safety, health and safety, having lessons and being able to swim and stuff. It's just we're trying to figure out how to do it with how close we're allowed to be with kids. So they've got face shields that the staff are gonna wear because you can wear those in the water. So at least if you're getting close, you have a shield in front of your face. So they've got a whole bunch of different things in place. So as soon as we really feel comfortable, we're hoping to start opening at least private lessons, mommy and me lessons, that type, or parent or adult lessons.
And I know it's going to be dependent on state and county thing opening, changing, but have we totally written, 2 of my favorite programs during the summer, have we totally written off the summer concerts and the McRae movies, or might we see something toward the end of the summer?
We have not written them off. We are holding on with floss, trying to see what's going to happen. So what's been canceled so far is what's been canceled, but we have not canceled anything after 4th of July at this point. So our hope is that, if large gatherings are allowed, we'll have it. I mean, I don't know what the reality of it is. I know in the order that just came out with weddings, which Jim mentioned, so McRae could have a wedding. You can't have a reception, but you can have a wedding now for 100 people at McRae. So if the movie theaters was on that list also, the movie theaters are starting to open. They're going to be following the same guidelines as churches, basically, about 100 people in the theater. So There's
Maybe
hope
you-
that
maybe you can
McCrae
find a
might
McCrae movie
happen.
That has a wedding as its theme.
Right.
So-
First you have the wedding and then you have the movie afterwards.
Yeah.
So I think there's definite hope for some things going on at McCrae with maybe some smaller numbers and some physical distancing. I don't know about the concerts. I don't know about the concerts. So, but we are holding on because if we have any chance, so it'll be 30 days out from every concert that we'll make a decision and then move them to next year.
I'm rooting for Labor Day.
Let's see.
Just
I
put
don't know,
dots
you
on the grass
guys.
6 feet apart.
I know, oh, we've talked about like having like corners and numbers and it's just, it gets to the planning and how do you do it and how do you monitor it? And then there's a lot more staff costs to it.
I like your pool idea. Everybody rents a square.
Yeah, isn't that a good idea? So hopefully they'll do, they came up with that. So, and I'm like, yeah, so there'd be about 4 squares that they'd be able to rent on an hourly basis and still have lap swimming going on.
Well,
So
I was thinking
There
for the
an
concert.
article a couple weeks ago, there had a picture of some park, I think maybe it was New York City, where they had circles on the ground and people could, family could be in that circle.
In that circle.
So,
Well, we thought with fitness too, we were just talking about it today, that fitness, what's a fitness class and whatnot and how young and stuff. I'm like, shoot, you can have a parent and me or adult and me fitness classes and just give them their 12-foot square and say, that's your square that you're in. So, I mean, you just got to be creative. And then the staff are creative. We'll come up with ways to do things. It's whether people are going to sign up for it and how comfortable they are.
Okay, Director Nichols.
Yes, you mentioned, I'll call helicopter dad, who was kind of scouting the place out.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I guess I can leave now. Of the folks that are coming, I say folks, parents that are coming, how many of them are like really critiquing, kind of taking a real close look, or they're just saying, here he and she is, and out they go?
Yeah. I saw one parent.
Okay, so there's not a lot of concern then?
No.
Okay, all right.
It doesn't seem to be. It seems like and what staff is telling me at pickup and stuff, that parents are, I mean, I think it's just more confusing and difficult for the parents because drop off and pickup is so weird and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids are getting their temperature before they come in,
Yeah.
that this is normal now, so there's definitely more hand washing and sanitizing and all that good stuff.
Mhm.
So it's just different, but I think that when the kids go home happy and have thumbs up, the parents are like, oh, so.
I just was looking at that picture. It reminded me with a boy like this. It reminded me of when Lisa, my wife, was teaching kindergarten for the first time. It says, not only you're teaching you're teaching how to be in school. You're teaching, no, we have to stand in lines. We have to do this. And so much of those first few weeks was just teaching them how to do school, let alone getting to the subject at hand. And I'm sure Director
Yeah,
Cusworth can mention that.
Yeah.
So I can imagine when you only have a week with them, it's like, you don't have a whole lot of time to kind of get the rules squared away and get to whatever the topic is. So hats off to the staff, because I know they're doing basically double duty trying to, what does 6 feet mean?
Daily discussions on what are our rules and
Sure.
stuff like that. And the kids that'll go multiple weeks, because many kids sign up for all the weeks or at least
Mhm,
multiple
mhm.
weeks. Like Nellie was saying, Director Cusworth, is that the kids that are in these summer programs, any summer programs, but especially ours, will be so much more ready to go back to school when or if or whatever school looks like, because this is gonna be normal to them. They're gonna know the rules already.
And if I were remembering correctly, I think it was just in the rules that General Manager sent out about the new face coverings, that campers and care facility for kids don't need to wear face coverings.
If you
Have
look
you
at
looked at
the-
it close enough?
We looked, because in the rules that they said today, it says unless there's other guidelines that these don't qualify for. So actually Tim and I were looking at the state guidelines for specifically camp. And we think what we're doing is actually a little higher than what the baseline is. So as long as they're 6 feet apart, it seems to be, we'll have to look at it a little more closely tomorrow, but it seems to be that the mask is not necessary if you can keep the distance, especially if you're outside. But if you're in, we are saying right now for our folks, that if you are within passing or you're inside doing something, that we're suggesting or requiring that they wear them. So like when you saw them in the line at the bathroom, that would have been, we would have had them do that. But the kids that are outside, that was kind of they all just wore them. So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just a real short interlude, and I'm sorry to say that. If they start taking their masks on and off, they're just going to lose their mask.
Oh,
Probably it's probably just better to keep them on.
Okay.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, I don't know how they've done that. We are working on purchasing some bandanas so that they could just wear their bandana around their neck. So then it just goes up. But still, you have to teach kids how to do that, because if they're touching the insides of it and stuff, it's really not worth anything. So it's all part of the lessons.
Originally came from McCray Ranch. Okay, we're moving on to 11C, Management Services Division. Alyssa, you have anything more to share?
Oh, I have nothing.
Okay, any questions? Not, we're going on to item B, General Manager's Report.
Very briefly, I want to welcome back board members who haven't been in the room for a while. So it's great to see everybody again. And it's really, having Mark and Scott, we have a theater guy and an IT guy. It's like the perfect marriage for trying to solve constantly evolving needs for a board meeting. So Mark figured out how we can still have us be part of Zoom and all that kind of stuff. So thank you to Mark and the other staff involved in helping the room set up. And then of course, Melissa and Rochelle on the extraordinary sort of second year of the 2-year budget, all that extra work. So thank you guys on that. And of course, Tom with his always capital budget and all that stuff. So based on your actions and discussion tonight, you've pretty much seen what the operating and capital budget would look like for year 2. And so that's what will bring you back on July 2nd. So thanks for all that input. And then the only kind of maybe thing to add is, right now the state budget doesn't look like it's specifically trying to do anything to us or take anything from us. So that's good. And obviously how the economy actually performs will be something that we see happen over the next year. How people are able to or not able to participate in programs will affect how the rec budget is. So the budget, it just, as a reminder, I know you guys know this is just a spending plan and plans change. And this year, probably more than ever, it will change. So we will make sure if there's any changes of any significance, we'll be back here kind of explaining what's happening and what's going on. And then the only kind of thing that's like normal that's starting to happen again is homelessness issues and encampments. I don't know if you saw the numbers that they were reporting that we were having, I don't know, 11 or 12% increase. They were saying statewide or something, but of course we are a piece of the state. And so we are noticing more and more homeless issues, and also the county is going to be shutting down at the end of June the, I don't know, 100 or so people or something they have in the hotel right now. So I don't know how that's going to work, because that's going to be an interesting thing. They're trying to place them into services and put them with providers and do all sorts of things. But I think the reality is it's going to go from not great right now to pretty bad in July. So brace yourself, because we're a piece of that brunt of what pretty bad looks like. So Tom's guys, even on developed park sites, not just open space, even developed park sites are dealing with homeless encampment issues. So it's kind of a constant issue of late. So, and then with that, I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions of the General Manager, Director Nichols?
I think it's just a kind of technical question, not related to your comments. I just was noticing on our agenda notice on the page 1, a little public advisory COVID. I noticed in the 3rd paragraph, it says the second sentence, to the public. If you'd like to speak at the meeting, you'll be asked to provide a telephone number where you may be reached when the item is discussed. I was just wondering how is that, what's the logistics behind that? I mean, if they're here to speak, aren't they here and you just?
Well, yes, the
send them
second
up?
paragraph. The second paragraph is you may participate in the meeting by physically appearing in person and
Yes.
providing comments. The third paragraph is if they're, for whatever reason, not comfortable coming into the room now. Like you see, we have it set up, they could come in and speak,
Yes.
but if they're not comfortable, we do have the ability.
Okay, so it's the option if,
Right.
okay, I was reading that thing, well, gosh, they're standing here, why do they need to call?
Right.
So, okay, all right, that takes care of it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Any other comments or questions? On the homeless situation and are people coming in contact with encampments, has there been any serious issues or any situations where our staff feels concerned?
I'd actually have to talk to Rochelle to get that specific thing, but I think in general, the staff do a pretty good job of having a rapport with the regular homeless folks, and they're courteous and nice for the most part, but there are a few known belligerent folks as well. So it's all over the map, really. But I think we don't allow people to close alone anymore in the centers. So
Yeah, no, most of the staff, if they have a problem or they know of someone that they're afraid or don't feel comfortable approaching, if something's going on, they'll call the police, and then the police come out, and they're very good at assisting staff with different homeless situations.
Okay, so,
But they're supposed to deal with things in twos, so.
yeah, okay, well, I guess with the anticipation of things getting worse, our people out in the field and so for open space and parks will have more of these situations.
and we're getting into fire season, so encampments are particularly of interest. Yeah. So, I actually have been trying to get more personally aware of exactly what's going on. I took a walk with a homeless officer, which actually is something, if you guys want to arrange for that, they have 2 officers dedicated to the homeless population, and they know them. Like, they know everybody. It's like, hey, Joe, they know all the folks and the players. And I took a walk between Page Lane and the Church and Temple on Jantz Road, on the opposite side of Canoe Creek South, on that opposite side of that freeway, that creek. Yeah, on the west side, along that creek. Don't go alone, but if you're curious.
I used to ride my bike there once in a while.
Yeah, so we probably walked past 15, Tom was with me, 15 different homeless encampments and through there. So it's an interesting situation going on.
Well, I don't want to belabor it and get into a lot of details, but I'd be interested in hearing more about that. Okay, we're going on to item 11E, director's reports and follow-up reports on meetings and conferences attended. Anything subsequent to our last meeting? Yes, Director Huffer.
Well, it's not really any meetings and conferences, but Rochelle mentioned, I'll just briefly talk about the CSVP tax program, which did restart this week. Totally different location over at the Goble and totally different setup. It's all by appointments now rather than just walk-in. But it seems to be working pretty well. We have 28 spots available each day for clients to come in, and a lot of procedures. They get temperature checked before they come in, and they're seated 6 feet apart before they come in to sit down with the tax preparer. The rooms in the Global Center, they have all kinds of hanging plastic sheeting that separates the preparer from the client, and one preparer table from another preparer table. So we're hoping the air conditioning doesn't fail, because it's going to be like a greenhouse in there if the air conditioning ever goes down. But as far as we can tell, we're about the only show in town. None of the other Vita tax sites have opened up as far as we're aware. So we're getting people from all around the county. And they are so appreciative, so it's nice. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's the update on the tax program. And then, again, it's not a meeting or conference, but I have to brag on myself a little bit. I finished the last 2 of the 10 hikes for
Ooh,
the
awesome.
open space. I put it off to the very end, the Conejo Canyons. I looked at the map, said, damn, I've got to hike out a mile or so just to get to the first trail. So
Yeah.
I did the Conejo Canyons last weekend. So I did 2 of them. So I'm done. Yay.
Good.
Now I can
Awesome.
enjoy the trails.
Awesome.
Well, congratulations, especially on that tax program. We've mentioned this in the past. We really appreciate your efforts. Okay. Oh, Director Hessworth.
Well, I followed Director Huffer's example and I went and got food at the nutrition place through their drive-through. I actually got 3 of them and took 2 to 2 women who are like 93 and 80 and haven't been out of their house. So we had a little, 6 foot apart lunch at one of their backyards. So they really enjoyed that. And I saw Director Huffer there doing his taxes. So I thought that was totally cool. And I've been in contact with Stagecoach. They're having people come out to have them approved for opening the outside tomorrow, and have talked with Shumash, who is planning to opening on July 11 inside, and they're starting the process for that. And I can't, and I thought they canceled that whole hike thing. I didn't even do it. I did 3 before the COVID thing came. Oh, they have? Okay. Well, you may have some Yeah, well, I think I will. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. That's it.
Okay, Director Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to mention how nice this arrangement is. I wanted to thank Mr. Segedy and all those participating. I mean, it's really nice. And I especially like having a full 6 feet to spread out here. I got papers all over the place here. So
I don't know, is this exactly?
we have to do this, I guess. But thank you for this arrangement. It's very nice. And then just on a personal note, because I keep getting questions, when are the playgrounds going to open? Why are they closed? You just keep getting peppered with these things. And of course, I have to share a few of my comments and concerns with the general manager as well. Sometimes just venting, sometimes actually asking a constructive question. But I thought, I'm going to do a little research. Let me just see what I can find, because I've heard that, kids are not as prone as adults and different things. So I went on the CDC website and found a morbidity or mortality weekly report, which just sounds terrible, but that's what it was, from April 10th. And they had some figures there where at that point, there were 149 laboratory confirmed US COVID cases, 149,000. Of those, 2,572 were for children less than 18 years old. So 1.7% were for less than, and which is interesting, that's 22% of our population. So a fifth of our population, less than 2% of the COVID cases. Of those 2,572 reported children COVID cases, 1,827 of them were in New York City, New York, and New Jersey. 745 were in all the other states. So you can see how things gradually dissipate throughout. And of those cases, I was looking at the different age groups. So, like our typical, recreation group, of the 745 or whatever it was, most of them were like in the 10 to 14-year-old range that were actually had cases. And then you get 5 to 9, even less, and 1 to 4, even less. And the other thing they mentioned was that in these cases, relatively few children with COVID-19 are hospitalized, and fewer children than adults experience fever, cough, or shortness of breath. So I found it to be true. What I had heard was that the children are just not that susceptible. And I thought, well, gosh, what a shame that we have to keep the playgrounds from them when they obviously, don't even get affected like adults do. And then I also went and further looked at some research on how the virus is transmitted on surfaces. And the best I could find was that it might be. So that, wow, we're really going to a lot of extremes here for less than 2% of the child population gets affected. And even that might be a cough or a fever or at best. And yet we're withholding all this from it. It just really burdened me. It was, oh gosh, why do we have to go to such an extreme for something that's probably less of an impact on kids than colds, and it happens all the time. So I probably not too much new information for all of you, but I just wanted to get to the facts and figures, say, okay, what does the CDC have to say about it rather than what the media says and all the memes that you see going across the internet. So anyway, I was really burdened with that, but I'm rested in the fact that now I have some facts and figures that if people ask me about, I say, hey, did you know? Or I can send us some information. So next is open playground. So we'll keep working on that. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You betcha. And I visited a couple.
Can I just respond to that? One person, even one park district is going to have somewhat limited impact on the state, because this is all coming from the state. And most of it, from my impression, I look at these orders as they come out, I have nothing better to do with my life until I can do taxes. But I mean, most of the stuff just repeats from one issue to the next, and they just keep playgrounds in there because probably no one has said, why are playgrounds in there?
Mm-hmm.
So one person in one district, maybe not much, but I mean, we do have the statewide park and rec district. We have the statewide rec and park.
Why aren't they doing it?
Get if all of the park districts, city and independent in the state got together and said, why can't we open playgrounds and a few other things, that we might have a better chance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to talk to other people. You can't talk to other people. You can't do it.
Well, I would agree to just the one person thing, because I can remember back in my days as a staff member at the city, one person coming up to the planning commission, making a comment and changing a vote.
Yeah.
So I realized one person can make a difference. So that I said, okay, I've got my ammunition. I just need to know where to point the gun and do something with it. So
Aren't you on the board of the?
yes,
Rick and
yeah.
Park? There you go.
That's why I'm doing my own research, No, not a VIP. I'm just another person.
You're a
Just
good-
one more person.
But that's a good source.
So I'm gonna, like I said, got my ammunition. I'm gonna say, okay, let's get a move afoot here, because whether it's to try and get something done a few weeks ahead of time, my concern is I don't want this to ever happen again. Flu or whatever it is. If that population is not susceptible, why are we going to these measures? So anyhow, thank you for the chance to preach at the pulpit for a minute.
Appreciate it. Well, I was going to make a brief report, but I was going to also solicit Rochelle's input on this program called Play Catch Ventura County. Anybody aware of that program? Yes. Right.
They've asked a lot of the local sports organizations to send in the video clip. I know baseball has, I think, and some of the other youth sports groups have sent in clips for this thing.
Yes, CRPD has one going, and I'm the representative for the Park District, and I did my shoot, I'll call it a shoot, videoing my participation, and I was passing the ball to Rancho Simi Rec and Park District, because per the general manager, Dan, they were going to participate. So that was all I thought taken care of. Here, find out yesterday that Rancho Simi is not going to participate, so I got to do a reshoot on it tomorrow.
They dropped the ball.
So
Okay, well,
it was supposed to be, yeah,
I might as well.
it was supposed to be, and Rochelle's back in the meeting. When is that video?
We're hoping it'll go out on Monday.
Okay, after,
We were waiting, we were gonna do it Friday, but now we're gonna do it Monday.
okay. Okay, and you'll be sharing it with,
Yeah, you guys will all be able to see it on social media, because once it goes out, it'll be on our Facebook page and everything. But if you want to see it at the following board meeting, I can bring it to that also.
Okay,
But yeah,
thank you.
yes,
Yeah,
thank you for
brilliant.
doing that.
Okay, any other directors' reports or comments? If not, we're moving on to item 12, requests for status reports and items for subsequent agendas. Okay, item 13, items from the public. We have no public. Item 14, executive closed session. Do we have a need for closed session? Okay, this evening, we're going to adjourn the meeting in memory of Richard Williams. And I think hearing that name means something to you because you've known
Yes.
the Williams.
Are you looking at me?
Yeah, because. of
Well, I
your-
didn't know who you were talking to, but yes, it was very
There-
important to me. Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're adjourning tonight's meeting in memory of Richard Williams, who died in his sleep on June 6. Richard served as president of the Conejo Valley Historical Society and co-chaired the Triumphal Ball. He served as president of the Thousand Oaks Rotary Club and was also involved in organizing many special events, including the Special Olympics of Thousand Oaks Street, the Thousand Oaks Street Fair, and Midsummer Wine Festival. He and his wife Elaine served as co-chairs for Thousand Oaks Arts Festival for over 10 years. As well as being a patron, Richard was chairman of the board for the Alliance for the Arts. At Cal Lutheran University, he served on the advisory council for School of Management. He was especially proud of his involvement in the Storybook project, which helped to keep families connected during their incarceration by recording imprisoned parents reading books to their children. So thank you, Elaine, for putting this information together. And anybody like to make any comments based on their? Okay.
I would just let you know that I'm a Rotarian and he was a Rotarian, and our Rotary meeting today was just dedicated to Richard and people telling stories about him. So it was really
good.
nice.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
it was really nice.
Very
So it was a Zoom meeting, of course, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was nice.
Still,
Yeah.
great. Okay.
They have been, in the community since I think it was 69 or, a long, long time. Both of them have done an awful lot.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And with that, we are adjourned. And again, Mark, thank you for what you've done and continue to do. This meeting is adjourned.